Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel SS Analysis. First of all, I would like to tell you that if you're watching this video first time, subscribe my channel to see my more upcoming videos on analysis of different commodities and equity indices. And second important thing is to watch this video till its end to understand this thoroughly to take your decision. Your one like will motivate me to be regular in working more hard for you. Let us start the day to analyze the movements of S&P 500 futures in different time frames. So friends, here you can see a monthly chart of S&P 500 futures where you can see that from the levels of 659 on March 2nd 2009, S&P 500 futures have been constantly moving in an uptrend where they found their first resistance in March 2015 at the levels of 2140. Here you can see that after repeated attempts of breaking this stiff resistance at the levels of 2135, finally the S&P 500 futures successfully broke this resistance on 1st August 2016, where the S&P 500 futures sustained above this level up to November 2016. Since then we can see the continuity of an uptrend in S&P 500 futures, which continued up to the levels of 2947, was detached on September 3, 2018, but due to the advent of tariff trade war tussle between the US and the China, S&P 500 futures started to move downward and continued to test the lows of 2315 on December 3rd, 2018. But here from these levels, here we can see that the S&P 500 futures found good support at the levels of 2495, and once again after coming downward when the S&P 500 futures touched the bottom of this uptrend, which I have constructed in red color. Here we can see that whenever the S&P 500 futures moved below the lower end of this uptrend zone, we can see a good recovery in S&P 500 futures, and here once again the S&P 500 futures found a good buying support from the levels of 2338 when the S&P 500 futures sustained amid this uptrend zone. Once again, no doubt that the S&P 500 futures touched the lower end of this uptrend zone once again at the levels of 2449 on January 1st 2019, and since then we can see the S&P 500 futures resumed an uptrend once again, where this uptrend has resulted in a sharp upward move during the month of November 2019, where the S&P 500 futures have come at the upper end of this uptrend zone, where I find that the current geopolitical situations look evident enough when we can see some sell-off in S&P 500 futures. We can see here whenever the S&P 500 futures try to move above this upper end of this uptrend zone. So I find that once again the S&P 500 futures look ready to see the next bout of sell-off, which may result in a downward move in the S&P 500 futures, as still the uncertainty is going at the tariff trade war front, because despite a plethora of commitments on the success of trade talks, but still the absence of a date for the next meet when this deal may finally be sealed, which may result in a sell-off in S&P 500 futures. Now let us see this move in a daily time frame. Here you can see that the S&P 500 futures have crossed this strong resistance level at the levels of 2947 and now have come in an oversold territory where they look ready to break the upper end of this uptrend zone, where I find that the bears will find a good opportunity to short the S&P 500 futures above the levels of 3133, and I find that a gap down opening on the first trading session of the upcoming week below the levels of 3115 will result an advent of a downward trend in S&P 500 futures, where the S&P 500 futures may see some bounce back from the levels of 3074 but due to the thick presence of BS amid this zone above the levels of 3106, which may result the S&P 500 futures to break this immediate support at the levels of 3063, where I find that a steep downward move may start below the levels of 3048 in S&P 500 futures, and finally the S&P 500 futures may likely to sustain at the levels of 3026, because this level may provide a strong support in case of a downward move in S&P 500 futures. So friends, be ready for an action in S&P 500 futures, because I find that a gap down opening on the first trading session in the S&P 500 futures will confirm the continuity of a downward move during the upcoming week, as despite the developments between the China and the US on tariff trade war front, Chinese news agency Xinhua has confirmed that still there is no fixed date for the next meet between the US and the China, which may result in going exhaustion in the S&P 500 futures. So friends, be ready to see an action in the S&P 500 futures during the upcoming week. Thank you friends, thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, don't forget to share this video with your more and more friends. Thank you.